I've never seen Shohei like this before. Nobody knew he had planned it. That is the part that stayed with people longest after Tarik Skubal said what he said. Not the visit itself. Not the image of Shohei Ohtani walking through a hospital corridor toward a teammate who was lying in a bed processing the kind of news that changes the shape of a season in an instant. Not even the gesture, which was significant enough on its own terms to earn the reaction it earned. What stayed with people was the word secretly. Ohtani had planned it without telling anyone. Without coordinating with the organization's public relations operation. Without the apparatus that surrounds a player of his prominence ensuring that the right people knew about the right things at the right time so that the right impression was maintained across the right platforms. He had just planned it. Quietly. On his own. In the space between his own obligations and his own preparation and his own daily existence as the most watched athlete in professional baseball. He had found the space and he had filled it with something that Andy Pages needed and that nobody outside of a very small circle knew was coming. Tarik Skubal found out. And Tarik Skubal, who had just earned his first win after being transferred and who had no particular obligation to speak about something that existed in the private territory of another player's choices, decided it deserved to be said out loud. He said it simply. He said he had never seen Shohei like this before. And the room understood that he was not talking about the baseball. Andy Pages had been hit by a 161 km/h pitch. That number needs a moment to fully land. Not the abstract version of it that exists when velocity figures appear in broadcast graphics and scroll past in the ordinary course of following a game. The concrete version. The version that requires thinking about what 161 km/h actually means when it makes contact with a human hand rather than a catcher's glove. It means the fracture happened before anyone in the stadium fully processed that the pitch had hit him. It means the sound preceded the understanding. The sharp crack that the crowd heard before they saw Pages pull his hand back. Before they saw the expression cross his face that athletes wear when something has gone wrong in a way that cannot be managed through willpower alone. Before the training staff was moving toward him from the dugout with the purposeful urgency that always feels both immediate and somehow not fast enough when a player is standing at home plate absorbing the reality of a significant injury in front of 60,000 people. He was helped off the field. The stadium absorbed it the way stadiums absorb moments when the line between athletic competition and human vulnerability becomes suddenly and uncomfortably clear. The noise dropping to something that was not quite silence but carried the texture of it. People watching without quite knowing how to watch. The collective awareness that what they were seeing was not a baseball play anymore but a person in pain. The MRI came later. The fracture was confirmed. The surgery was scheduled. And somewhere in the process of all of that becoming official and real and documented, Shohei Ohtani began making plans that he did not tell anyone about. Skubal spoke about it in the context of a post-game availability that had begun with questions about his own performance. He had earned his first win since the transfer. That was the story the room had assembled to discuss. His pitching. His adjustment to the new environment. The way he had performed under the specific pressure of a first win that had been building across the starts that preceded it. He answered those questions with the directness that characterizes how he handles media. No deflection. No false modesty. The honest accounting of a pitcher who understood what he had done and was willing to discuss it plainly. And then something shifted in the conversation. A reporter mentioned Pages. Asked about the mood inside the clubhouse following the injury. Asked whether the team had found ways to process the loss of a player who had been contributing in meaningful ways before the pitch at 161 km/h ended his participation in the season. Skubal nodded. He said the mood had been what you would expect. Difficult. The kind of difficulty that a clubhouse absorbs when someone gets hurt badly enough that the timeline for their return extends beyond what anyone wants to think about concretely. And then he said the thing that the room was not expecting. He said he had found out that Ohtani had gone to the hospital. Not with the team. Not as part of an organized visit. Alone. Having planned it without coordinating it through any of the channels that these things typically travel through when a prominent player wants their gesture of support to reach the right people and be understood in the right context. He had just gone. Skubal paused for a moment after saying it. Then he said he had never seen Shohei like this before. The reporter asked him what he meant. It was the right question. Because Skubal had said something that required unpacking. Not because it was complicated but because it was specific. He had not said he had never seen Ohtani be generous. He had not said he had never seen Ohtani support a teammate. Those things existed in the observable record of how Ohtani moved through a baseball environment, and the people who paid attention had seen versions of them before. He had said he had never seen him like this. The distinction mattered. Skubal said that what was different was the quality of the intention. The completeness of it. The fact that it had been planned without any expectation of anyone finding out. Without any of the considerations that surround a public gesture when the person making it is aware that the gesture will become part of the public record of who they are. He said that most things that prominent athletes do exist in some relationship with the awareness of being seen. Not cynically. Not as a criticism. Simply as the honest reality of operating at a level of visibility where almost nothing happens entirely outside of public awareness. The cameras are always somewhere. The people who talk to other people who talk to reporters are always somewhere. The private gesture and the public gesture exist on a continuum that visibility collapses into something closer than most people realize. Ohtani had found a way to the other side of that continuum. He had planned a hospital visit for Andy Pages and had not told anyone, and had gone and had sat with his teammate in the specific private way that sitting with someone in a hospital room requires. Without the apparatus. Without the coordination. Without the awareness of being seen doing it that changes the nature of what you are doing even when the intention behind it is genuine. Skubal said that was what he had never seen before. Not the gesture. The completeness of it. Inside the hospital room, according to people with knowledge of the visit, Pages had not been expecting him. That detail is the one that changes the texture of the story most significantly. A planned surprise. Ohtani knowing that Pages was there and knowing what he intended to do and arriving without the announcement that would have given Pages time to prepare for the visit in the way that people prepare for visits when they know they are coming. Just arriving. The way a person arrives when they understand that the most valuable thing they can offer is not a scheduled appearance but the unscheduled presence of someone who decided that being there was more important than the convenience of advance coordination. What passed between them in that room was not something that traveled far beyond it. That too was consistent with how Ohtani had approached the entire situation. The planning had been private. The visit had been private. The conversation that happened inside that room was private in the same way. Not because secrecy was the goal. Because the moment belonged to Pages and Ohtani and to whatever they said to each other in the space between a fractured hand and a season that had just changed shape. The people who knew about the visit described Pages afterward as someone who had been reached by it in a way that the ordinary expressions of organizational support had not quite managed to reach him. There is a difference between knowing that people are thinking about you and having one of those people appear in your hospital room without warning because they decided on their own that appearing was the right thing to do. Pages knew the difference. When the information reached Skubal and he chose to share it, he did so with the awareness that he was making something public that had been deliberately kept private. He did not make that choice carelessly. He said afterward, when a follow-up question pushed into his reasoning, that he had decided it deserved to be known. Not for Ohtani's benefit. He was explicit about that. Ohtani did not need the story to be public. Ohtani had demonstrated through the entire sequence of his actions that public recognition was not any part of what had motivated him. Skubal said he wanted it to be known because of what it said about the kind of environment a team becomes when the people inside it operate from that quality of intention. He said that what Ohtani had done quietly was the kind of thing that changed how a clubhouse understood itself. Not through a speech. Not through a meeting or a formal gesture or any of the organized expressions of team unity that organizations sometimes produce when they want to demonstrate something to the outside world. Through one person deciding in private that a teammate needed something and then providing it without telling anyone. Skubal said that was leadership in a form that most people never got to see up close. He said he was lucky that he had. The 161 km/h pitch had fractured Andy Page's hand. The surgery was scheduled. The recovery timeline was real. The season had changed shape in the way that seasons change shape when a player who had been building towards something finds himself building towards something different instead. The patience and the work and the slow return to full capacity rather than the continued accumulation of the moments that had been arriving before the pitch found his hand. That reality did not change because Ohtani had visited. But something about how Pages was carrying that reality had changed. The people who saw him in the days following the visit described a version of him that was still dealing with everything the injury required him to deal with. Still processing. Still facing the long arithmetic of recovery. But steadier. The way a person is steadier when they have been reminded in an unexpected and completely genuine way that the people around them are paying attention to more than the box score. Tarik Skubal had earned his first win since the transfer. That was the story the room had assembled to discuss. But the story that left the room with people was a different one. It was about a hospital visit that nobody knew was coming. And a player who had never been seen quite like that before.